And we are recording with Dr. Richard Urso, who was friendly enough to send me a bio beforehand so I could introduce you, but I meditate before every podcast because apparently I can't not somehow tie in spiritualness to this. So I didn't have time to go over it. So real quick, if you would like to introduce yourself to my audience and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I'm glad to be here. We had a nice little chat beforehand, a couple minutes, and basically my background's in drug design and development. I basically invented an FDA-approved drug. Did 9 years in a tissue culture lab and 2 years in a biochem lab. I've been practicing doc since 1989. I've seen about 300,000 patients. I've seen about 1,600 COVID patients, and I've been involved in it since the beginning. And when I saw what was happening, when I saw what was transpiring, I basically got involved very early on, just because I'm interested in medicine, drug development. Some of my colleagues and I actually started talking back in February of 2020. They knew that I was involved in drug research. They asked me to get in on some calls. We started talking to people in other countries, primarily like South Korea and Italy, and it was become really well aware. It felt like our usual thing, like we're going to team together, docs getting together and just doing our thing, like other people do their jobs. Engineers plan and we do our own planning. We think in broad categories. We said, hey, this is an inflammatory disease. This is a blood clotting disease. What a surprise. Coronavirus has never been a big blood clotter. That was a real shock. But of course, the respiratory distress. So it became very much a four-part prong approach to treating: attack the virus, treat the inflammation, treat the respiratory distress, and treat the blood clotting, and you'll be okay. And that was early March. We didn't have a lot of weapons that were direct for viruses, but remember, viruses and cancer cells are very similar in that they use our machinery. It's hard to attack viruses because when you attack a virus, you're attacking yourself. They use all the same machinery that we use to make replication cycles. So when you're attacking a virus, you're oftentimes attacking some of your own pathophysiology is getting disrupted. Also, your mitochondria at the cellular level. Most of the time, whenever a cell is replicating, you're attacking, like in a cancer cell, the replication cycles. Well, it's the same type of drugs. For instance, they're using molnupiravir and remdesivir to attack the replication cycle. They're mutagenic agents, and of course, they don't work without creating mutations. So you might actually create a code for catastrophe, basically, if you use these kind of drugs. And there's better drugs out there. At the end of the day, we had a lot of drugs in March of 2020 for inflammation. All of you know that anti-inflammatories are well known. Prednisone. We had lots of drugs for blood clotting: Eliquis, Xarelto, Lovenox, many others, aspirin. We had lots of drugs for respiratory depression, like things like budesonide, other asthma drugs. And we had I identified 8 things that I thought would really work well. So I think that's kind of the start. That's where it all started. And that's where the shock started coming in, when I started broadening out amongst my small colleague group and actually talking to people I knew in the industry, and getting told, I know we just need to go home. And I've never heard that before. I'm a doctor. Like, it's like telling like I was through the AIDS epidemic. We never went home. We just walked in the room and took care of the patients, so we didn't even know where the origin of it wasn't identified. And in other pandemics, we don't know, but that's what you do as a doctor. It seemed totally absurd that we were going to walk away. And so, of course, I didn't. I treated my first patient with steroids, azithromycin, vitamin D, hydroxychloroquine, and aspirin, and he had a tremendous improvement. And I decided to talk about it to some of my colleagues, and I got rebuffed again. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go online. Let me see what happens. I went online. I think it was like March 10th or 12th. And well before Trump said anything. And I said, hey, I think there's some stuff we can do. I think we can fight this disease like all the others. And I got a couple 100,000 views. And of course, my background in the lab, people don't know about. They just read up online, say, hey, he's an ophthalmologist. And I said, yeah, well, it's, first of all, I'm an oncologist, ophthalmologist. So I have a background in oncology. But the years in the lab gave me a lot of ability to talk about drug design. So that's where I was, and basically got attacked, got reported to the boards for saying that I knew things. I was just really kind of surprised that I was getting attacked by people who had no medical background. I was just like, this is hilarious. But I was a little bit scared. I think that lasted a day, and then I talked to my wife and I said, look, if I can't be a doctor and I can't speak up about the stuff I know about, then I'm just going to go be a fisherman. That's all. There's
Yeah.
no reason I'm not a doctor. And that's kind of what started off. I literally sat, looked her in the eye. I said, if I go and I end up passing away, and I'm trying to hope that I end up in heaven, right? And then basically I look and say, hey, I knew all those people were going to die. I knew I had treatment, but I was afraid to speak up. I didn't want to lose my job. I mean, literally, I just knew it would be a cowardly thing to do. And I knew not everybody knew that. And I didn't expect everybody to do it, but I knew that I knew it, and I knew it well. And so I had to move forward, and I've been going ever since.
Yeah, that's what about, I think it was like March or April last year, I got my first strike on my YouTube channel from having on Dr. Roger Hodkinson. And I realized very quickly, I was like, I don't want to, I was like, I don't want to get my channel banned. It's still tiny. So I just kind of started like self-censoring. And then I had on a CIA veteran, Claire Lopez, who started talking about the 2020 election and like CCP involvement. And I got another strike, and I was like, all right, well, I just won't talk about that. And then it kind of dawned on me, because I interview a ton of military veterans. It kind of dawned on me that like, I was like, I have this flag behind me. And I was like, what arrogance and what lack of a spine and a lack of testicles can I even begin to fathom that I am going to dare have a flag about freedom and liberty behind me and be like, well, there's just a couple topics I can't talk about. And I was like, all right, let's, we're just running into this thing blind fire. And of course, got permanently banned for that. But you do have this sort of, and for me, it's not even, I always talk about it. I got into medical school, I decided not to go. I got into pharmacy school, decided not to go. And I really don't have any interest in ever pursuing that stuff again. I just like doing this podcast because I just like talking to people. No part of me ever set out to do a COVID podcast. Like, I wanted to talk about like UFOs and skyscrapers and nuclear submarines, and I still do. But for me, it's something so much larger, and it's the beginning of censorship. It's what's creeping in. It's had on Mike Collins yesterday, who's running for Congress out of Georgia. And he's a second generation trucker. And he was like, this is nothing to do with like trucking. He was like, don't get caught up in the minutia. What this is needing a vaccine to go across borders as a trucker really is, if you break it down, it's A, needing government approval to B, participate in polite society. So that's kind of why I keep hounding it so much, is anyone with even a remotely, barely scratching the surface understanding of human history, not even human, just the last 100 years, knows where all of this goes. And it always starts with, it's for your health. It always starts with, we're just censoring the fringe. It always starts as this. So to go back to what you said earlier, I don't even remember if it was before we started recording or not, early on, and you just thought it was normal medicine. You said, yes, just like, hey, there's whatever, maybe something's not approved, and this is just, I don't know, your regulatory people, your ambulance chasers, like whatever. What was it that made you really, was it the censorship for you, with the criticism for you by people who aren't medical professionals? What was it that made you realize, oh, this isn't, I just had on Dr. Merrick, and he was like, most of the doctors, he's like, we don't even know what is on and off label. We just know what works for what. And he was like, never before has it been, you can't do that. You're going to lose your job if you do that. Go home.
Yeah, Paul said it really well. I never even thought about off-label. I always do off-label because I do its works. And
Yeah.
do that. People are doing research all the time. So these things, anything's a chemical could have multiple effects. So we know that. That's how, I took nerve growth factor and turned it into a wound healing drug for diabetic wounds. Okay, so now if you hear the word nerve growth factor, what makes nerves grow? Why would it heal a wound? Well, because it does other things. I found epithelial cells with nerve growth factor receptors. I thought that might mean something. So there's always a better mousetrap. It's just medicine. Okay, that's why always say that's why we call it the practice of medicine, because there's always an adjustment. So what the weirdest part for me was when I had these people telling me not to talk. And I was just like, why is the media coming after me? I go, this seems insane. They don't know anything. And then I had people in the medical board and people in the medical association. I'm like, they don't, and I know because they don't do any research. They literally have no, we're not peers. All right. They're sort of colleagues, but they're on a whole nother level below me, unfortunately, and when it comes to drug design.
Yeah.
So, it just is what it is. And it's nothing bad. It's just they didn't spend any time doing it. I spent a lot of time doing it.
Sure.
The end of the day, I don't take anything away, but I just knew that wasn't the group that should be criticizing me, because I already knew I had literally had the data inside my head, and I spent so much time during my lifetime just looking at inflammation and wound healing. It's a big deal. So I knew what I was doing right from the get-go. But the thing that clued me in that something was weird was when they said in Texas that if I used PPE, this is in March, if I used PPE, I would actually potentially be criminally liable for getting in the way of Emergency Use Act. That I'm wearing a mask and wasting this mask when there's short supply, supposedly. And I thought to myself, fine, then I won't wear it. I don't need it. The mask doesn't, and I literally was like, well, the mask doesn't work against viruses anyway, which is another thing that I knew back in March, just like Doc said in March. It was like, so work in a virus lab, and there's something called R99, R100 PAPRs, tight-fitting R99, R100. They block 99% of airborne particles or 100% of airborne particles, and actually the R100 blocks 97% of all viruses, so it's really powerful against viruses. The R99 is blocks most viruses. But bottom line is N95 is non-oil resistant. It doesn't block any viruses, it blocks zero. And just like peeing in a pool, it doesn't stop. You have two bathing suits on, it's going, I'm sorry, it's not working. So N95 is like peeing in a pool. It's an N, it stands for non-oil resistant. It's an oil capsule virus, just like influenza. It goes right through. And guess what? Oil does not stick to water. You need to stop. Like, these things they say are just garbage. And anybody who's done the science knows. But more importantly, it's not just theoretical. They've done 14 randomized controlled trials. 0.000% of randomized controlled trials show that masks stop the spread of upper respiratory disease. The science before it says it shouldn't, and then the actual randomized controlled trials show that it doesn't, period. So the nonsense was so early on to me. And then we were locking down healthy people. Like, we never locked down healthy people. It just seemed from a fraud from the get-go, mostly because I knew the drug stuff. But then as I looked at everything, we've never locked down healthy people. Masks don't work. There's no such thing as social distancing. That's called isolation. Of course isolation works. We don't like it though. We're human beings. We like company. We like hanging out together. So at the end of the day, we were literally making up some stuff that just, I just couldn't see any rationale to anything they were doing. And I tried so hard in March to get to the president. I have no background in politics at all. Eventually I made it to the White House. So, I made it there, and I made it a few times, and I ended up talking to much of the family, Laura, Eric, and Don Jr. Vice President Pence, a lot of people. Everyone was so kind and nice, and everyone was very helpful and listened. But at the end of the day, there's like this inertia, and there's a powerful forces. If you don't think there's powerful forces, these are the most powerful forces on the period. All right. This is no little game. Literally, we are playing with the big boys. They want to turn us down. There's no reason to do it. It's a complete fraud. The whole thing, we could have saved most of the people. 800,000 died. Most of them didn't have to die. All right. We had early treatment. So, and when I say that, I mean that with all my heart. All right. Everybody that we treat early, almost 0% died. And I don't mean 0.1, I mean hardly any. Not Brian Tyson did 7,000 patients. Of the ones he treated early, like 6,000 something, 0 deaths. He had a few deaths in the people that had treated after day 7, 8, 9, 10. I've treated 1,600. Of the ones that died, and there's 5, but 3 of them I actually never actually encountered with treatment. I literally just heard the thing, and I said, you need to go to the hospital. Like, you have SATs in the 60s. They couldn't move, they couldn't breathe. I said, well, you know, to go to the hospital. I learned pretty quickly that that was a bad place to go. And we stopped, we stopped sending patients to the hospital. But overall, we had a total of 5, and they were all picked up on day 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, late in the disease, when it's like knocking over dominoes. So for the audience here, yeah, you're here and I'm here together because they've decided to use a disease as the tip of the iceberg to basically set up a new world order or whatever they're planning on doing. I don't know what they're planning on doing, but I can tell you this: there's no medical reason to have a pandemic and shut everybody down, make everybody take a vaccine. We could talk about the vaccine at some point, but at the end of the day, the very fact that they weren't going to do early treatment, the very fact that was the tipping point for me of just, it's a complete fraud. Because I knew you're going to tell me you can't use steroids outside the hospital, you can't use Eliquis, aspirin, Xarelto, you can't use budesonide, Flonase, all the things that we use for asthma, all the things we use for blood clotting, all the things we use for inflammation. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, what you said, anyone that thinks there aren't powerful forces at play has their head in their sand or up their ass. And like you, I don't claim to know what it is. You know, you can go on one full end and go, it was intentionally released to lower the standing of America and break the supply chain of the whole world and establish mandatory vaccines and digital IDs to control the movement of 7 billion people, which is every dictator's wet dream. It could have been that it was a virus that was accidentally released, still being researched, but accidentally released. And, a bunch of pharma companies are capitalizing on it, just like they always have, either with opioids or with, 9 out of 10 doctors smoke Lucky Strikes. Sure, there's always been something like that. It could have been an aligning of forces. 9/11 didn't have to necessarily be planned. It could have just been, hey, an accident, don't let it go to waste. Well, of course, the big national security state's going to jump on it and say, we need the Patriot Act. We need the Department of Homeland Security. We need domestic surveillance. Like, those are some like patterns as old as man. So regardless of what it is, whether it's full blown New World Order, which I don't even think is that far out of the realm of possibility, or whether it was just really a bat and a pangolin, and now we just have Pfizer taking advantage of it. There's absolutely, excuse me.
There's 100% engineered virus.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I was playing the spectrum. Yeah. It's
like, people, if you have nuclear energy and you try to make electricity, I could be okay with it. But if you take nuclear energy and you make a bomb, I don't care why you made a bomb. Now that the bomb got released by accident or not. So that's basically what happened.
Yeah.
It was a virus. The fear and cleavage site has never been seen in nature ever. It was completely gain of function, which means they made it more infectious on purpose, right? That means that they basically made a bomb. Now, whether it got released by accident or not doesn't matter anymore. Why were they making a bomb? There was no reason to make a bomb. They made a up-engineered, a more infectious agent. All right. And there was no reason to do that. It has no benefits to mankind, zero. So whether it was accidental doesn't matter to me anymore. That should have nehave happened. Should have never happened.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think of, chemical, or not just chemical. I just went over this in the last podcast, but I mean, World War I, they saw how dangerous, but also kind of how haphazard, mustard gas was. The wind, literally the change of the wind, and you don't know which way it's going. So we fast forward to World War II. We have Dr. Kurt Bloma of the Third Reich. He called it the sword and the shield. If we're going to use a sword, we better have a shield. So we'd vaccinate our entire army and our population, and then we use weapons. If you got really into it, you could even make biological weapons that went after certain races. And then, Shiro Ishii, Unit 731 in Manchuria, who operated on American POWs, which, spoiler alert, we brought all those guys back to the United States during Operation Paperclip as well. We then look at the treaties we had with the Soviet Union, that we kind of saw a bioweapons arms race as, or if not more lethal than a nuclear weapons arms race. And I've interviewed 7 times now Dr. Ken Alabek, who is the first deputy director of Biopreparat, the secret Soviet bioweapon program that was going on after the treaty they made with us. They were putting Ebola into like cruise missiles and stuff, real Dr. Evil stuff. He defected to the United States in 1992. I'm with you on that. If I play devil's advocate and play all sides of the field, so when I say stuff like maybe it was a pangolin, to me, that's just keeping my mind open. But I'm with you. Is it doesn't really matter. It does, but it doesn't. Why was the bomb being made at all? Especially if any country, you have to then decide, well, was it an accident? Did it slip out on someone's shoe, or was it released intentionally? Man, if we're all in a room and the food in the refrigerator, the leftovers are gone, and one of our roommates is morbidly obese and he was the one home, no offense, fat guy, but I'm going to say, like, man, if it was Bob or John, maybe I'd say, okay, maybe we don't know who did it. But Kevin's over there and he's 900 pounds. I think he's going to do this. So if the benefit of the doubt has to come down to China with 2 million people in concentration camps, with nets around the Foxconn factories, who have stated they'd use unrestricted warfare, asymmetric warfare, do anything they want to take down the hegemon of the United States. I've had on Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who's in Obama's National Security Council, wrote a book called Stealth War, all about China's 100-year plan to do anything against us, whether it's flooding the borders with fentanyl or whatever. I look at them as like, man, if it slipped out of like the UK, I might be a little more in line with going, maybe it was an accident. Why would they do it? It's our ally. Even Russia, I'd be like, we've gone to toe to toe with them. Why would they do it now? When it comes from China, it's not only does it matter why were they making a bomb, no part of me can even begin to go, maybe it was an accident. That's just kind of where my mind is at.
So if you look at, Peter Bregan, I don't know if you've interviewed him, but he's got a great book. And Peter Bregan, Breggg.
I'll make a note of that right now.
Yeah.
Bregan.
So he traced this all. So China did not do this by themselves. All right. So they had great assistance from our biological weapons people here. And so I think that it's unfair to blame only the Chinese. There was a lot of assistance from others in this country. So other countries too, England, I think there was some help from Israel. I think there was some help from other European countries. So it was a collaborative effort to build these gain of function viruses. And I don't have the trail of crumbs on it. That's not what I do. But Peter Bregan has you might want to interview him. He's got a really good book. If you want to see what, the stuff on Fauci, of course, Bobby Kennedy's book's fantastic. So I think that I would highly recommend that for everybody on here. But I think the easy thing to say is, just as a doctor with background in developing medications, I can easily tell everyone that treating this from the beginning should have been happening. We didn't have to have it perfect to at least attempt to try to attack the virus. And even if you're not successful there, gosh, if somebody has a fever, you treat it. If you know there's going to be downstream blood clotting, maybe give aspirin, give Eliquis, Xarelto to somebody. Most of the people dying, of course, ended up with comorbidities. That's the main people who died. So very few people died. Most of them are elderly with comorbidities. It's 95% of the people who have passed away. I know everybody knows somebody who was 30. Well, I had a 32, a 35, 38 that I know have died vaccine. They die of pericarditis, myocarditis. But I mean, people are dying, they're younger, but at the end of the day, the data collection is not very accurate, right? So the CDC stopped tracking, for instance, the vaccines back in May. Why did they stop tracking? Oh, well, that's another question. So everything you see is, where are we getting our information? We're getting it from people like myself, Senator Johnson. Senator Johnson's put together a couple conferences. Anybody who wants to support somebody who's trying to find the truth, Senator Johnson from Wisconsin. He's amazing. He's done so much work. He's one of the only ones that actually tries to find out what the truth is. And all we're trying to do is say, like, we formed a group called the International Alliance of Physicians and Scientists. Why? Because people are trying to pick us off one at a time. We started with a core from, Harvard, Hopkins, MIT, Yale, Harvard, Stanford. All right, a couple of us, small core, 8 to 10, 8 in the first meeting we had. At the end of the day, we ended up putting together the core and kind of going forward, talking to everyone. And now we have, since the beginning of September, 17,000 doctors and scientists who were our group. So we've built our organization bigger than the CDC, the NIH, and the FDA. Why? because there are honest people that are trying to do the right thing. So we're not one scientist. I don't sit here as one doctor. I have basically, I feel like I've got the team of doctors I'm representing, or I'm helping to represent 17,000 doctors who do believe that early treatment is effective and would have saved at least 85% of the lives, at least, probably more. The data from some of the places is like 98% of the lives would have been dead. It would have been maybe under 100,000 deaths. This is something that is basically what we would consider to be like crimes against humanity, really. I mean, when you think that someone knows something, like if I didn't speak up with the knowledge I have, you don't see anybody come and telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about. You will never see it. They literally won't say it. I mean, they could say it if they want, but they would never debate me on it. The data is too strong. For instance, the natural immunity denial. We have 146 studies showing that natural immunity is superior. So what have they done? They know that's true. So they tried to create this new thing called super immunity. And I tell everybody that super immunity is right in this is, I think you could find the same place you can find Superman. It doesn't exist. There's no such, making stuff up. They literally stuff up. And I'm not joking about it. They're really making
I know. It's just, it was a good line.
Like, how are we going to get past this? Like, let's make up the word super immunity. I'm like, what? I mean, who? I'm not. It's like a 12-year-old made this thing up. Like, and then I believe it. Oh, super immunity. But the thing is, like Harvey Rich talked about the other day from Yale, the immunity you get from the vaccine is all driven towards a spike. In nature, you usually get all the immunity driven towards T cells, which I tell people your T cells are like the right-handed side of your adaptive immune system, and the antibodies are like the left-handed weak child, stepchild of your immune system, of your adaptive immune system. And what that means is when you drive everything that way, you should drive it towards the appropriate way. So they're driving antibodies towards the spike, when in nature you get antibodies towards the nucleocapsid. So this would have been a smarter strategy. The spike is the toxin.
Yeah.
It's the toxin. So what did they decide to make out of the 29 proteins are on this virus? What one did they use? The one that causes
the toxin.
Isn't that crazy? So they had all these choices and they chose the most toxic portion of it to create it. And it's been shown in experimental models by the Salk Institute, people who are actually bought well into the pharmaceutical industry. Most of what I'm talking about here, and I'm given data for, is data from the normal academic centers and the science and the industry itself. So people are honest all throughout this. There's a lot of honest data, but the people at the top are not. Why? I don't know. I do know they're not. I do know they're saying the things that are not true when they say it's a disease of the unvaccinated. I'm treating right now. 2/3 of the people I'm treating are vaccinated. I mean, that's who's getting it, which is probably about, down here in Texas, like 60% of people are vaccinated. The vaccinated people are getting it just as much as the unvaccinated. So all these things are basically like just fabrications. But the more important one over and over again is there's prophylactic therapy. They did stuff with hydroxychloroquine, but it's even better with ivermectin. Vitamin D is amazing. All right. If you have good vitamin D levels, it's your data analyst. So you can think of your immune system has to figure out, is this pathogen or pollen or cancer cell? Or vitamin D helps make all those decisions for your immune system to make the right efficient responses to these things. So get your vitamin D levels up. There's early treatment. That's a big message over and over. Don't be scared. There's early treatment. There's stuff we can do. It's really not that hard if you're a good doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was laughing at your Superman, it's not making light of it. I just thought it was a good line. Same, you're right. It's like that headline. There's like that headline like a month ago, and it was like Delta and Omicron have teamed up and created Deltacron. I'm like, this sounds like an ad for a Marvel movie. They're gonna team up. Can Superman do it? Like, join in next week. But
it's not true. That turned out to be just quickly for your audience. The sequencers. I know sequencers, and they're sequencing. There's not that many in the country, and they're about 2 weeks behind. So they're all, when the CDC gives you data, they're giving you modeling data rather than real data. There's still a lot of Delta left in the country.
Yeah. But to what we were saying earlier about, we can't just point fingers at China. And I believe that 100%, as much as that rant I just went on that said this is a Chinese weapon, there was too much involvement from too many nations. And it's scary, but to me, that's what leads more substance to the idea that this is some global plan. It's we're all kind of in on it, and why are we in on it? And on one hand, you know, it doesn't matter, and I say that lightly, and I'll get back to it. On one hand, it doesn't matter because you have patients in your hospital here and now dying. You have people being kept from getting ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, all the early treatment from Dr. Fareed, etc. And so at one point, it doesn't really matter if the Titanic hit an iceberg or if someone just has like a hose on the deck. It's like there are people like getting cold and drowning, so we got to save them. Okay. On the other hand, you do have to kind of find out what is happening. And my analogy is this: is in the brilliant planning of the Allied forces in World War II. It was they said that one German tank could take on 4 American tanks, but we won because we always had 5 American tanks. And then we started looking at, well, how do we, instead of having to scale up, because what if we can't get enough tanks? What if we just find like the 5 or 6 factories where all these tanks are being built? And so we started looking at those and trying to bomb those, but they're really heavily guarded. And then some genius, I don't know who, traced it back to like one centralized power plant somewhere in Germany that was like, they had these factories within like 10 miles of them. And they're like, well, what if we just hit the power plant? And that's eventually what we did. So on one hand, it doesn't matter because there's a German tank coming over the hill and that thing's about to blow us to pieces. But on the other hand, you do have to have the sort of, back at the Pentagon, the FDR, Eisenhower, you do kind of have to zoom out and go, I'm not making light of the German tanks that are blowing our boys to smithereens, but can we look at a 30,000 foot view and do we see where it's coming from? Because otherwise we're just going to be stuck in this forever. And that's kind of my logic, is both matter. Does that make sense?
I agree with you. What I usually say is go ahead and keep building them. You keep building the tanks because I'll find the power plant. That's what we're doing. That's basically the way. All right. If you think I'm just going to attack that, that's not what I'm going to do. I'll attack, basically behind the scenes in another way. There's always a better way. There's always a better way to fix a problem. Medicine is like that. There's so many attack points. So, and that's a great analogy. I love that whole story because that's basically what we do. And when we're going after these things, we don't necessarily have to win the battle against the tank. We don't necessarily have to beat the virus. We just need to mitigate the damage. We don't cure diabetes, right? Most of the time we mitigate the damage from high sugars. So we do things to mitigate. So mitigation strategies are incredibly important. So if one strategy isn't working, then you change gears. And that's what a good doctor says. Right now, what these doctors are being stuck with is they do these protocols, like you heard Paul Merrick say, and they don't veer from the protocol. That's absolutely idiotic. I literally could not sit there and watch people dying. I would never allow it. It's against the laws of nature to do that when you know there's a better way or might be a better way. And inevitably that if you just went with the same plan, what do they call that? If you do the same thing over and over again?
Vanity. Yeah, no. Same thing over and over again, looking for a different result.
It's just like, you look for. So what you just pointed out is the ingenuity is key, and the ingenuity in battle is very similar in medicine. It's very similar. There's always ingenuity, and that's how we become successful. That's how we succeed. And I think this is something everyone needs to hear. So our current system is broken, right? So are we going to sit around and just keep a broken system? No, we're going to build our own information system. WebMD, here we come, right? We're taking over the basically the internet with information for doctors. That's number one. Then we'll build our own telehealth platform, and then we'll build our own ambulatory care clinics that don't let people die early and tell them to go home when they have COVID. And then we'll build our own hospitals, our supply chains, our surgery centers. It's doable. It's not that hard. I know what to do, and so do a lot of other people. And we're going to go after it. And so everybody who's here on the call, like, look, we're going after it. We're not sitting around. And the people it's like Robert Malone, Peter McCullough. All right, we're a team. We are a team. We're America's team right now. All right, we don't want to be America's team, but that's who we are right now. And we're fighting for our freedom. We're fighting for everything, because if we let people die unnecessarily, we've let you down. And we're going to fight to not let that happen. We're going to fight these vaccines, which are the most toxic chemical you can possibly put out of the whole coronavirus, You put the most toxic protein out of the 29 that's there. So no, we're going to speak out, guys like Malone. And for people who don't know, lipid nanoparticles go everywhere. They are, so part of my thing I told you is oncology. We use lipid nanoparticles to go in the brain. So they're really good at going in the brain. I know that already. Problem is we were trying to get them to carry chemo. Reason we didn't use them was because we didn't want to carry chemo to the bone marrow, to the adrenal glands, to the ovaries, to the spleen. So you're letting your children get exposed to this inflammatory compound, lipid nanoparticle, which is carrying a messenger RNA going to make another inflammatory protein called the spike. And guess what? In the ovaries, there's a lot of ACE2 receptors. Hello, it's going to cause inflammation. That's what it's guaranteed to do. Is it going to cause infertility? I hope to God not. So I think that we can pray and we have to do that. But I also think we need to go after the truth, the science, and not be afraid to speak the truth. We can't be. You not only have to know the truth, you have to speak truth. That's called courage. Although it's hard for me to believe that I'm sitting here as a doctor saying I'm speaking medical truth with courage. I don't really feel that much courage from it. I feel like the other side, what I told you earlier, was that if I didn't speak the truth, at the end of the day, I don't bow to man, I bow to God, and that's it. And so that's why, in some sense, I have to speak truth. There's only one person would know better.
Yeah.
God would know. God would know that I had fear in my heart of man, not enough. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's 100%. I'm with you. It's it's easy to get jacked up. You have the American flag behind you. You're like, we're speaking truth, but it's not. It's not always that. What got me into medical school, 1 out of 100 times was thinking about, man, I can't wait to be a doctor. 99 out of 100 times were, man, if I fail, I am so screwed. I have these student loans. I better ace OChem. I better learn it now. And to me, that's what more of it is. Isn't 1 out of 10 times it's a courageous, like, I interviewed Dr. Malone and McCall before Rogan. Like, I was doing it before. It's cool. Let's do it. And then the other 9 times is just like, I'm complicit in this. If myself, who has worked my ass off to get to a point where I get to be my own boss and choose my own guests and do podcasts about whatever I want. So I now have a platform. It's a tiny platform, but it's my platform, and I can talk about whatever I want and spend all day long researching whatever I want. I'm now complicit if I don't do something. But to me, I'm always optimistic. If I'm not optimistic, I would just get depressed and die. I have to be optimistic. I'm optimistic because I've used this analogy before, and it's cheesy, but just like if you don't wipe out 100% of the virus, that remaining little bit that's going to, and not just COVID, anything, right? That's going to have that mutation that allowed it to survive. And then that one's going to proliferate. And that's how you get the new generation with the most progeny, right? Like a giraffe with a taller neck. If you don't kill it all, if you come at the king, you best not miss. If you don't kill all so my logic is like, knock on wood, they haven't killed us all, right? They haven't killed us all yet. So to me, it's driving like variants of free speech. Like, I was on YouTube and I'm banned. Did I stop? No, now I'm just on Rumble and Odyssey and BitChute and whatever. I'm on all these little platforms. Do I get banned from maybe like Facebook? Sure, but now I'm on all these other random ones. And I used to have all the podcasts on one hard drive. Now I have them on a couple inside of a fireproof safe, inside of a waterproof safe, because I'm like, screw these people. I'm going to win this fight. I went from talking to my friends about like, do you think UFOs are going to land, to now I'm like, every day I'm like texting with Dr. McCall, Dr. Malone's hopping on here. I'm having you on here. I just had on Merrick, and it's like, what the hell is going on? But I'm connecting with all these people, but it's because we're all working towards the same thing. So again, whether we're not taking out the tanks or taking out the power plants or just pushing towards Berlin till Adolf pops himself, one way or another, we're going to win. The only way we're not going to, and that's why I talk about with why I know my podcast is going to succeed, because I'm a psychopath who doesn't take no for an answer. But my logic has always been this: I won't be alive. And this is what I thought too when I was pre-med and I did get into medical school against all odds. My logic has always been, I won't fail. There's 2 options. I will either succeed or I will be dead. If I fail, but I'm still alive, I haven't failed yet. It just means I get to try again tomorrow. And if I die, it will mean I failed, but I won't be here to experience that. So to me, it's like, you literally got to kill us all or we're going to win. That's just what it is. Maybe that's that cocky American thing. I don't know. That's my logic. And now I'm starting screaming and shit. So
No, I think you're just reaching in and finding that, sometimes we have to find another gear. And,
yeah.
I have 6 kids and I would train them in sports and stuff. And I was always the coach of the team. And I would tell people, all right, look, you keep going. If you break a leg, you start bleeding, you fall down, you can't breathe. All right, fine.
Yeah.
But until it happens, don't tell them. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to
Yeah.
know why you didn't rep. I don't know why you would want to do another set because we're just going to keep going. If
Yeah.
something breaks, we'll take a break. I
Yeah.
don't want to know about the bathroom. I don't want to know about any of that. So I don't know. Peter McCullough, he always texts me. He says, "Stay relentless," and I always laugh because he's like relentless. So,
Dude, he's insane. He's insane, man.
love the guys. And to Pete, listen, Malone is fantastic. Pierre is fantastic. Paul, all these people are fantastic people. They literally are fantastic people. And I can't say enough about the group of people that are fighting this fight. I mean, they're in a sense, they've decided like, we can't sit by. We like I said, we are the tip of the spear. They're using us to create another paradigm. It doesn't exist. What they're doing, it doesn't exist. There is not a virus that's impenetrable. There is not a virus that needs a vaccine for every single person. Doesn't matter if you're 85, doesn't matter if you're 5, doesn't matter if you're sick, you're not sick, doesn't matter if what comorbidities you have. I mean, it literally doesn't matter. Everybody needs a vaccine. This is absurdity. And then they deny natural immunity, even if you had the virus. The intellectual arrogance of denying natural immunity is the one Achilles heel. You were talking earlier about attacking the tanks. We should go for the Achilles heel. This is absolutely Achilles heel. There's no reason to not go there. People from 2003, SARS-CoV-1, are still immune and have requisite T cell immunity to SARS-CoV-2. But let me say this, because people are like, oh, what about Omicron? These viruses create cross-reactive T cells. So as you get all this immunity to these other variants, you're actually getting cross-reactive T cells that are going to basically, they're not like antibodies. Antibodies are like car keys. Antibodies might not fit. Like my car key doesn't fit for my last year's car, but a T cell is a tow truck. It doesn't need all the directions. It basically is coming. It's going to tow you away. It doesn't matter. So keep those things in mind. There's a lot. Like if you're sitting in my place, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid because I know this is medically very easy. There's nothing hard about this in terms of attacking it from multiple levels. And that what everybody here needs to know. This is a fraud. It's a fraud in every such way. There's treatment for inflammation, for the blood clotting. I hate to keep repeating it, and for the respiratory distress. And there's treatment for the virus itself. And if you want to hear this, I don't know if anybody's talked about it, but I'll talk real quick. Molnupiravir and remdesivir, they're nucleoside analogs. Remdesivir, I don't know if Paul talked about it. He talks about it sometimes. It can't work. The virus is replication incompetent after 5 or 6 days. So if you give a patient remdesivir in the hospital, day 15 and 20, you're giving a compound which has no chance of working. The only thing replicating then is your own cells, your own mitochondria, your own normal cells. That's it. That's why it causes kidney failure. That's why it hasn't proved to show extend life. And in most cases, it increases the chance of dying because it can't possibly work because it has no chance of working because the virus is dead after 5 or 6 days. Remember that, okay? If anybody remembers. Now, molnupiravir, you're going to give it early. Now, molnupiravir is actually what we call a mutating agent. It actually creates mutations in the replication cycle as the replication cycle is occurring. It puts in fake, basically, codons into the replication cycle. What this means is that if you do create mutations, you might create for people who don't know, they didn't use it for influenza because they created mutations that were more dangerous and worse. So that's what happened in influenza. It was abandoned because that's molnupiravir. Paxlovid, they literally, for people who don't know, you need to hear this. These drugs are from the 1950s. Nucleoside analog, molnupiravir and remdesivir, those two drugs are literally sisters and brothers of drugs from the 1950s that were cancer drugs. You heard me say it earlier. Cancers and viruses use our own cells. There's a reason why the same things that work for cancer can work for viruses a lot of times. All right, let's go to the Paxlovid. That's the new drug from Pfizer. This is an old HIV drug. They literally took the drug Calitra, which is off patent. They dressed it up a little bit and they put the same one drug in, it's a combo, ritonavir, and then they put another drug in there, which is just a little bit different than the other drug that used to be there. And they're literally the same drug. They're so toxic. I've had 3 patients take it. 2 of them had really bad GI side effects, diarrhea, stomach ache, nausea, vomiting. Like it's killing the what they call the 3CL main protease with the chymotrypsin-like protease. And you take this big polyprotein and you chop it up into 11 pieces, and then you can assemble the new virus. So without it, you can't assemble the virus. The problem is, like I said, this same protease, there's other ones just like it that need to make our normal cells. It's a very toxic drug. So these are not good choices. Ivermectin, super safe. Azithromycin, super safe. Cyproheptadine, super safe. We have Singular, Pepsid. All these drugs are super safe, and they interfere with the virus replication, and they decrease inflammation. Fenofibrate. There's a bunch of drugs many of you may even be on. So, or unless this may be a younger audience. But basically, these are just common drugs that have other effects besides what I just mentioned. Fenofibrates for cholesterol. But guess what? It fights the virus. It stops blood clotting. It stops inflammation. It does all those things. Isn't that amazing? I mean, these, and they've been proven to work against these viruses.
It's it kind of sounds. I remember the example from OChem was the enantiomers that they use when the patent runs out. So they take like one of those like anti-narcoleptic drugs that they started giving to like stealth pilots for their 30-hour missions, but it was like a Drafanil. And then when the patent ran out, they like switched to hydroxyl group, so it was like whatever handed, and turned it into like modafinil. And then after 5 years, they turned it into armodafinil. They're just
well, yeah, keep going, because that's the audience needs to hear that. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah, that's what it is. And so you just keep moving the patent. It's like changing the charger on like the charging port on the iPhone, right? You got to have this charger now. You got to have that charger now, because that's the only way you're going to keep buying chargers. But
yeah.
So to see that, though, I look at this as it's unnatural what they're doing. And it's always harder to do some sort of top-down tyrannical control system. You have to exert so much energy blocking everything out. I mean, even in the Soviet Union, the KGB would check on who was buying this much film, and sometimes it was just like an artist, or sometimes it was like a movie maker who knows, maybe that would have brought more money to the Soviet Union, because they would have, but they were so scared that they were like recording military secrets. So now you're stifling all these like, and this is just one example, you're stifling all these like potential Steven Spielbergs or something, but it was happening across everything. You can't have access to this much metal, because what if you start making your own tank armor? And it's like, dude, we're just trying to make a more efficient car. So eventually you can use a lot of force. And as we saw at the Soviet Union, from really when the Cold War started, from Berlin airlift to whatever, 89, 91, I always get it butchered. You can use it. You can use overwhelming power for a long time. Like, it can work for a bit. It's not totally incomprehensible, but it will eventually collapse under its own weight. And it's what David Hoffman said, called it we have the invisible hand of the free market. Totalitarian systems have the hidden hand of suicide. Eventually, everyone's always trying to defect. And even if they're not, they're always being cut off at the knees, because they can't do X, Y, and Z, because this might be you're trying to overthrow. Ken Clisby, former CIA agent who I've had on here, talked about willing accomplices. It's all about the KGB's active measures over the Cold War. The KGB used to call back. So let's say they send over 100 agents. And I know I said I'd let you go in 40 minutes, and we've gone 10 minutes over. But the KGB used to send, let's say, like 100 agents to like 100 cities in the United States. They all got to recruit 5 people, and then they start doing their little whatever dissemination plans, propaganda plans. They would then take the 5 best who had the best results. I've got these guys, and now I've put them in whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, man, you're doing the best. You've got you take the top 5% of your students, and they'd call them back to the Soviet Union to congratulate them. And then they'd execute them, because what those 5 were the most competent, which meant they posed the biggest threat to those in power. So there's an invisible market hand that will always kill itself. So even now, I mean, there's got to be people we don't know about, maybe we won't know about for years, there's got to be people in the FDA or in the CDC or in the intelligence community or working at
There is.
Facebook, and they know something's going on. It's going to kill itself. It might take a while, but it's going to kill itself.
There's a lot of people, those agencies that are good people, just the top
Yes,
people. Some
absolutely.
of them, for people who don't know, if you, I don't know if you covered this at one time, but when they actually did the CDC advisory council on the vaccine, they didn't recommend a booster 16-2, and then the commissioner overrode them. I
And
mean,
those
there are
two
good
guys quit.
people there. Yeah, and those two big guys quit. They didn't want any more. But it goes to that saying, the tighter your grip, the more that slips through your fingers. So that's that's basically what's happening. But there's people like you and I, and there's people on here that are listening to us talk, and we know that we need courage, and courage is big. I mean, unfortunately, I never thought I needed courage, really, other than just moral courage, more or less. But this is moral courage in its own way. So if you're say our prayers, we're not going to sit down, we're not going to nail to man. I mean, we'll be one of the ones that'll be shot, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's not going to kneel down. It's not right. I might say different if they're torturing me really bad. Who knows? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, no, I'll break. If they're torturing me, I will temporarily break. But as soon as I get
I
a
think
hold
of
of myself, yeah,
I think of the Passion of the Christ, when Christ was carrying the cross, and I was like, man, I couldn't take it anymore.
yeah,
I still watch.
yeah,
So I'm sure I would probably break at some point, but unless they're torturing me like that, I'll probably, I'll be going. And I think more importantly, we are doing God's work. We are doing the right thing. We're doing what Americans know to do, which is to speak up against tyranny. That's not what we allow. The First and Second Amendment means something. It was written into the Constitution for this very purpose.
yeah,
That's very purpose. And this is why, in a sense, we have to resist. My role, in a sense, is, intellectually, I can provide people with the courage of the truth. I can provide them with the truth, not the courage. The truth is, these are fabrications. These are not. There is treatment. The vaccines are very poor. They're very leaky. They don't stop transmission anymore. They don't stop infection. And if you look at hospitalizations in Scotland, where we're getting real data, and you look overseas, the only place we're getting data saying it's all unvaccinated people is here. Around the rest of the world, we're seeing lots of more people, for instance, in Scotland, dying that are vaccinated than unvaccinated, 83%, I think. So at the end of the day, it's our job to continue to bring the truth. And here's one, like you said, that last example you just gave, that metaphor, basically, they didn't expect the actuaries to come out with data showing that 40% of the deaths between the ages of 18 to 64. So they tried to lock up all the medical data, but then they forgot about the actuaries. And they're actually like, 40% more people died this last year. And it's clearly, there's no other thing that changed except the vaccine. That's the only thing different. 40% more people died. It's a 10%, for those who don't know, a 10% rise in 1 year is a 1 in 200 year occurrence.
yeah,
That's a very high number. A 40% rise is basically a complete aberration, a 1 in a million type shot. This is very dangerous. If you remember a couple things from this call, remember this: there's early treatment. It works. It's been known since March. We keep adjusting. If you talk to Pierre, myself, the others, we've adjusted so many times. We adjusted on Delta. Ivermectin wasn't working so well. We started with hydroxychloroquine and steroids. That was working pretty well. There's lots of blood clots. We had to worry about that. And then we made the adjustment in Delta because everything went apart. But we were always treating inflammation. We were always treating blood clotting. We were always treating respiratory problems. We're trying to treat the virus too. We always are trying to look at it from different systemic, big picture ways of attacking. That's how we do medicine. It's cardiovascular, it's pulmonary, it's tumor, it's inflammatory. We use big categories and then we wind it on down. That's how you call the practice of medicine, right? Then think about this on the vaccine. I want everybody to hear this. This vaccine is blocking tumor suppressor genes P45, which is P53, which is the guardian of the genome, and BRCA. What this means is when you lock those genes up, lots of cancers are going to occur. A lot of them. We're going to see a lot more cancers. If you keep getting spike put into your body, you're going to be locking up more and more of this P53 in your body. All right, that's not a smart thing. Secondly, we're seeing T cell surveillance for things like mono and shingles and herpes virus. We're seeing these unravel because the spike is also hurting toll-like receptor 7 and 8. I'm seeing a tremendous, huge amount, to get my clinic in here, of mono, recurrent mono, CMV, herpes simplex, and shingles. I had a record year of shingles last year. We have 300,000 patients in my clinic. If you think I'm small, I'm not small. My clinic has 300,000 patients coming through a year. Okay, so this is not somebody whose talk said, well, we had 50 patients. Like, no, we have a huge number of patients. What I'm saying is this data stuff should be being done by the FDA and the CDC. These people should be doing it. That's their data analysis. There's people like me that have to call this together. I'm happy to do it, but it just seems like it seems wrong that our agencies are so captured. There's so much corruption there, but it's not the lower level people. And some of them are coming out and they're giving us data. They're handing us data. All right. So I want everybody to know that the world, there is stuff slipping through their fingers all the time, and you're part of the answer, right? And that's important that everyone feels we are part of the answer, all of us. And so I'm so thankful to kind of be on this call with you and help contribute and be with all those great people you brought on the call. And there's so many patriots who come from different walks of life. The truckers, we're completely behind them. There's something about the rawness of being a trucker. You're on your road all the time.
Hardcore.
And just you call them hardcore, right? But you see a couple of them crying about their kids and the future, and it's just they don't want to die of a vaccine to get stuck in there. They know some of these are young, healthy guys. If anybody's seen all the soccer players that are dying all over the world, it's insanity that this is happening. These people don't need a vaccine. So I just want to say, like, our three core things are: let us treat patients. Children do not need this vaccine. It's going in their ovaries and their brain. You don't need vaccines in the ovaries and brain. They don't have to go there, right? And we should never give in to natural immunity denial. That is basically intellectual arrogance. It's saying you're better than God. They're not.
It's there's another perfect example though, right? Of thing you didn't expect. You thought you buttoned up all the holes and crossed the T's and dotted the I's. Like, we got them. And then you have the actuaries. Well, maybe we can plug that up. Well, that's soccer players. And it's like, well, shit, we can't do that because that will waken up even more people. How come I can't watch sports anymore? How come they keep, they put like a delay on that's coming. Is there soon going to be like a delay? Just like when people swear during the Super Bowl and they have the beep, there's going to start being, you're just going to see like a weird cut in the feed. You're going to be like, what just happened? They just skipped 5 seconds. And where's number 5? That's coming. It's all coming. But or whether it's the truckers, like, why are all these truckers? It's just a fringe minority, and it's just like an avalanche of metal and rubber up in Ottawa. It's all coming, but you have to do your part, because if you don't, you get what you deserve. You deserve the resulting tyranny. And you may be thinking, well, dude, I work at AutoZone. I don't have time to do this. I don't know anything about medicine. I don't have a pod. Share the podcast, not just mine. Rogan's, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You have to get the information out there. Well, people might not like me. Screw them. It's to share it. You might get banned from social. Okay, you can do something. You can absolutely do something. And I mean, even just share memes. It doesn't matter. Do something.
Yeah.
Use unconventional warfare against them.
So this is a great point. And so I think the thing is, every person here, think local. Do the most you can right where you are, in your own family. Some of them may be against you. That's fine. But think about local. What can you do? Your school boards. Don't trust the legislature, the school boards. Of course, some are great people on the school boards and legislatures. But at the end of the day, we have to reinvent ourselves. If you work for a big corporation, make a group that's against all this stuff. Find a way, start a signal group, organize. So organize, be a leader and organize. So when people come to me and say, hey, I want a vaccine, I want to get away without having a vaccine. I go, no, you're a part of the answer. You're not part of the problem, because right now you're part of the problem. If I give you a card, then I fix you. Then what do I do for the other people? No, you have to lead. The very fact that you're so strong and you're a hot coal and you feel so strong inside of you, that means you have leadership. It's there. You just have to bring it out. It's there inside of you. If you feel strong, if you're listening to what we're saying and you feel strong, the leadership's in you. You can be a leader. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, keep using unconventional means. I mean, I had a guy on like 500 episodes ago, but we talked about the history of pornography. It was actually pretty interesting, all the way back to like the 1700s. And I might be butchering this, but they actually used like pamphlets during like the 1780s in France during the French Revolution. And because like those part of like the royalty and I guess they're like henchmen, it was too improper to look at a pamphlet of, the drawing of a naked woman or something. They wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't look at it. But inside the pamphlet would be like, we need to overthrow the government. We need to like put Marie Antoinette in like a guillotine. But it was like, oh, I won't touch. So just do weird shit. Make memes. It doesn't make memes and put them on the inside of a stall in a bathroom. Just be like, hey, here's the early treatment protocol. Like, make them uncomfortable. Like it. And that's what I mean is use your own ingenuity. Don't do what I'm saying. General Patton. Don't tell someone how to do something. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with their ingenuity. Just do that.
Form teams of other people. We're always stronger together. And you'd be surprised when you're feeling down, your other guys will pick you up. Form teams, form those signal groups, form teams in some way, form some team like, hey, I don't believe the school board. I don't like them. Okay, fine. Get a group of parents together that are going to do something or anything like what you just said. You want to help the truckers, somehow find a way together to do it. Form it in terms of teams. Because if you're working together, it's hard to beat people who are working together. They hate us working together. They don't want us to unite. That's why we have 17,000 doctors. And we go up there, we're like, hey, we're 17,000 doctors. We're 17,000. And guess where we come from? I'm coming from the top cancer hospital in the world. You guys come from Hopkins, Harvard, Mayo Clinic, all these places, Stanford, Yale, Oxford. I mean, this is where we're coming from. We're not small, we're not small. And stop saying, stop trying to marginalize what we're saying. Like, stop it now. We reorganize. Now we're bigger than you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we're not the underdogs. So don't think we're the underdogs. God's with us. You're not the underdogs. We're the upper dogs.
Oh yeah. And it's also, I always think about this. It's always more fun to be the person doing the thing you're not supposed to do. Even if you're a little kid, right? It's always more fun to like, pass Pokemon cards or something. Even if you don't want to play, it's just you want to be the cool kid, right? Alcohol became so much less fun when I turned 21. It was so much cooler to like sneak vodka in a water bottle and go to like a shitty high school party and not really know what you're doing. You throw up after 2 drinks. It's always more fun, right? It's always like the Mighty Ducks. Like you don't want to be like the evil team from Iceland with the matching black uniforms, right? So it's always more fun to just do what you're not supposed to do. And yeah,
well, now
do that
for good cause too.
Yes.
You'll be in the. I mean, we literally are on the right side of history. So
yeah,
it is a complete medical fraud. There's not one real thing. I'd like somebody to point out one real thing about it. There's nothing real about it. We had early treatment. And we still have early treatment. We have prophylaxis. The vaccines are leaky and don't work very well. They're causing P53 blockage of the genome. They're ruining T-cell surveillance. They're turning a T-cell dominated immune adaptive system into a left-handed antibody type system. Everyone knows that we have lots of antibodies against HIV and that doesn't help. T-cell destruction is the worst thing you can do to a system.
Yeah.
So T-cells are important to our immune system. So on every single level, there's a medical scientific fraud. And people don't even know who didn't heard this. The Lancet, one of our Bibles of medicine, published a completely fabricated study on hydroxychloroquine about 1.5 years ago. And guess who authored the study? The head of cardiovascular at Harvard. So if you think, he said he checked 93,000 patients, 671 hospitals in 6 continents, put all this data together. He's the head of Harvard CV. He didn't see a single patient. It was a complete lie. And we all called him out on it. And they had to retract it. And he never lost his job. I mean, if you don't think that's a complete fraud, this is what I'm talking about. The level of the fraud is so brazen that they would literally do stuff. And all of us were like, it's only 2 months into the pandemic. There's no way you could have 93,000 patients, get all the IRB approvals, all the ethics board reviews. There's a lot of hassle and the regulatory of it all. No, it didn't happen. And then not everybody has Windows XP or whatever is there. We all have different medical record system. It's a mess when you have people coming in with massive illness and sickness
it's hard to keep records, right? Because everybody's, it's a massive rush to the hospital. People are afraid. And so the records keeping, you're not going to have like extra people around just hanging around looking at data. That doesn't happen. And we knew it was a fraud. It was a fraud. And this is the kind of stuff we're dealing with. It's a complete fraud, and a complete fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like you keep saying, and I'm with you too. I've got my brother's necklace on now, but find God. And if you can't find God, find your balls. But I mean, do something, just do something. And we'll wrap this one up with this is look at when I was in a fraternity, fall 2009, back when that fraternity was banned from campus, but back when I was in there, and it was, I mean, they'd hit you, they'd throw shit at you, you had to be a DD at 2 a.m. 100 nights in a row, making you drink shit, act like an idiot, go do it stuff across campus that I probably still can't talk about now. All this stuff, what they'd always say to you is, you'd start a pledge class with like 50 guys and like 10 would finish. They'd always tell you, like, look at the guys around you. And if there's someone else that hasn't quit, don't look at that as like inspiration. Find someone that like you look down on and be like, dude, that guy's a wimp and he's still doing it. And then they'd say, take it one step further. Look at the brothers who are initiated, the ones that are hazing you. And don't look at like a cool one. Look at like a loser and be like, dude, that guy made it. And I won't say his name, but there was always one example in my mind. He's a great guy, but I was just looking at him. I was like, that guy, like that beta male made it. I was like, all right, I got to do this. So my logic is this. When I look at like the evil side and I look at like a Klaus Schwab or an Anthony Fauci, like those guys, they're the ones that they're gonna run your life. Those not the Soviet Union and their waves of tanks, not Hitler and their dive bombers, not the Imperial Japanese and their psychopathic kamikazes, but Tony Fauci, and they're gonna block you on the Facebook so you can't put. That's what's gonna win. If we let that win, we get what we deserve. We get what we deserve. So again, find God, find your balls, find something. But man, I mean, the win is ours to lose. So that's kind of my logic on this. And yeah, man.
If not we, then who? Right? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
So, it's if not we, then who? And so if not we, then who? And we're talking Fauci and Schwab. Seriously, this is not their planet, right?
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, come on. Look at those guys.
Our planet. It's not their planet. God is with us. God is not with them. And we know what the right thing is. And yeah, you might need courage, but it's going to feel a lot better at the end of life to have lived with with your feet on the ground and not on your knees.
Amen.
That's what we're going to have to face up against, but it's worth it. As I said before, we may say different when they're sitting there torturing us and bring us down to Gitmo, but
we might be hollering.
So thanks for everybody. You guys are obviously, I know you got a younger crowd.
Actually, no, I don't.
That's pretty interesting. So I think in general, what you said is very true. If not we, then who? And that's what we have to keep thinking. Let's do it. And we could form teams. Don't do it by yourself. Don't feel like a lone ranger. You're not. There's many of us here. That was a big strength to me back when I started in March. I felt like the lone ranger. Eventually decided I had to keep going. And eventually people said, hey, I heard you talking, or, let's get together. Before I knew it, now we have 17,000 doctors and scientists all on a team. So
I want a very quick story is Dr. McCullough invited me down to Austin over New Year's Eve to meet Alex Jones. And it was like the coolest thing ever. My brother lives in Austin, so I got to hang out with him. And yeah, I go down there and I was sick. I had a stomach bug, gastroenteritis, and I was tired and I was there, but I was like, whatever, I want to meet McCullough. I want to meet Alex Jones. And it was the coolest thing ever. And we're leaving. And my brother's taking me and McCullough back towards the airport. I had a hotel, but McCullough was flying back that day. And, I was like falling asleep. I was like, dude, I just want to get back to my hotel, take a long shower. I'm going to go right to bed. Like, I don't need to fly back for like 2 more days. I'm so excited. And McCullough's in the back seat And he was like, man, I'm flying back to Dallas. And he's like, I got 5 more interviews today. And I remember part of me was like, what are you? And I remember going like, you're insane, man. And he leaned forward in between the 2 seats, my brother driving, me on the right. McCullough's head just kind of comes up and he just says in my ear, he goes, relentless. And I was just like, you really are relentless, man. I was like, you're insane. You scare me. He goes, relentless, Tommy. And I was just like, he is on that Christ energy. But him, Malone,
Yeah,
all of them.
he's great. They're all great guys. Peter's the captain, so Malone is fantastic too.
Yeah.
And you cannot imagine the heart he has, the intellect he has. And Pierre, incredible heart. Very charismatic. I mean, it's a great group. Group.
Yeah.
Can't say enough.
I want like a 1700s oil painting of McCullough, like George Washington, like a one-shot revolver and a big fluttery coat and a wig or something. But
I'll probably talk to him in about an hour or two.
Okay. I literally text him every day, so it's same thing. Excuse me, Dr. Urso, thank you so much for coming on here. I will text you the episode when it's up. It should be up in like an hour or two. If you could please tweet it or put it on whatever social media you're on, and would love to do it again sometime, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, man. Thank you. God bless America, everyone. Do the right thing.